So peace has been with us for a month, and I love this quote: "The felt sense of safety is the treatment," by Dr. Stephen Porges. And that's what we've really been working on in this first month. Peace has been here. Look at the change in her body. But even more importantly, there's been a real change. Even there, you can still see kind of a look in her eye of distance. And there she's with her buddy Joy, which I'll update you on Joy in a minute. Peace was a little shut down and very kind, very sweet, very gentle, but just not quite able to really connect and feel safe. And I could just sense a shutdown. And this video that's starting is my first little session with her, and I'm going to talk you through how that went and how we have been developing a felt sense of safety. So here I'm just leading her out, and I'm just asking her to drop her head, and you can see how she's stuck. I'm just putting pressure on the rope. And what often I'll do if the horse won't respond to that pressure, you saw I moved her head back and forth, and then I took my other hand and just gently placed it on the top of her head and increased the pressure there on the rope and on the top of her head. Not hard, but enough to hopefully elicit her to just drop her head toward the ground a little, and then I could release pressure both on the rope and from my hand on the top of her head. But as you can see here, she's not doing anything, quote, bad. She's standing like a good girl, but she is not giving in, and there's a lot of fear. And right there I realized, okay, this is not working. And I didn't have much pressure, but she just kept going up. So I just started to rub the top of her head. Now in a second here, I realized as I move my arm across the top of her head and I bump her ear, look at that. She says, oh gosh, that is better. But in a minute, you'll see as I brush that left ear in particular, she has a little bit of a panic response. They're just jerked up a little, so I just went over the left ear a couple times. There I have a little bit of pressure again. So I removed the pressure after a few times, and here's something I really want to share about a felt sense of safety and the difference between trauma-informed training and just behavior modification. Can you see how, I know it's a little bit of a distance here, but how I'm interspersing the pressure, there she goes and drops her head, to drop her head with just some comfort, some scratches, some gentleness. Because if we just follow the sort of prescribed way to get a behavior through what many of us would call natural horsemanship, which is hopefully better than a lot of methods many of us were taught, is just pressure and release. If I put pressure, which I was doing in the beginning, pressure on the rope and then pressure on the top of her head, that the minute she goes in the direction I want, does the behavior I want, that I'll release that pressure. And we always say in natural horsemanship, the horse learns in the release. The moment they release, they learn what the behavior is they're supposed to do. So you can see that piece, while she's very compliant, she barely even moves her feet, she is not giving me her head. And I'm moving her head side to side, and she's yielding side to side. I'm wanting her to drop it to the ground. There was a little drop, so I gave for a second, just sort of loosening her up. So here again, I pause and just rub on her, realizing she's in a shutdown. And if we think through what we know, or maybe you don't know yet, about trauma in the body and stress, they're two very different things. There we go. She gave a little, I just rubbed on her, and look how quickly her head comes down. Not just from the release of pressure, but from the connection, the felt sense of safety. So we're going to come back to that exercise in a little bit, but I want to just throw in here while I'm walking her, and one of the tools that I've learned to use in myself with horses and with helping other people is what I call the 10-point scale. And imagine this 10 points, that 4 to 7 is what we call calm alert, where we can learn, where horses can learn. Above that, in the 8 to 10 range, is what we call the stress response. And if you noticed her, there was no stress response, no apparent stress response. There's a teeny tiny bit as I'm attempting to sort of shoo her out to lunge, and she doesn't want to leave me. So in my mind, as I'm doing this with her right now, I'm thinking, oh boy, okay, I want to see how she can lunge, if she can go around me and move away from me. Yet I just spent a few minutes building trust with her and asking her to drop her head and feel safe with me. So I was inside feeling this sort of like, interesting, what do? Do I keep moving forward with saying, I really want you to move away from me? So here I just took the end of the rope and I'm not touching her with it. I'm just swinging it in the space behind her, seeing if I can help her to understand what I want, that I'm not trying to make her feel afraid and run away from me, but I just want her to move to a different spot. I felt like she was coming out of being calm alert. And that if I continued the only way that I felt like I could make her go away from me and quote lunge would be to bring my energy up so high as to almost scare her and bring her into that stress response like this. So I was like, okay, what do I need to do? So I brought my energy up a little and said, okay, let me see what happens. And she starts to go away from me, right? Which is what I want. But now she's just going away and not forward. And she's looking at me, swishing her tail. And what I saw was this look like, I don't understand. I thought we were friends and you wanted to hang out and now you want me to go away. And you can see all the releasing of energy through her tail there. Some horses who are more in the stress response as opposed to the trauma response, and I'll get to the finishing of that 10-point scale, might really have acted out there. They might have not just stepped sideways like she did, but they might have run sideways, might have even jerked on the rope or pinned their ears. Some may have even turned in and maybe pinned their ears at me. You know, that they were more in that 8 to 10 range of fight or flight. Like, if I can't get away from you, I might come after you. They may have even kicked out. You see none of that behavior from her, other than very subtle cues. The tail kind of flapping, which remember before we saw none of that when I was just petting her and asking her to drop her head. Now look there, we got some forward motion. So I stepped back and I drew her into me. I thought, good, she gave me a little bit of what I wanted. And that's where, when we're training horses or when we're working with ourselves or others, we need to stay what I call humble and teachable. I came with a plan thinking, oh, okay, I've seen her lunge once before I got her on a video. And I thought, okay, she knows how to do this. But what she told me, at least this day, was either I don't know what you want, I don't understand, or I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe and secure with that. So there we got a little bit better to this side, which is always a little surprising that horses often off the track will lunge better to the left and not the right. But notice what I started to see right before I drew her in was her speed went up. And I thought she's gonna get up, even though it's kind of good that she's activating coming out of the freeze, which let me jump and finish that really quick. On that 10-point scale, if 4 to 7 is what we're aiming for, that they can learn, that's calm alert. It's a wide range of very relaxed to energetic, but in it does not have any sense of hyperactivation or shutdown. And if the 8 to 10 is the stress response, where we see the fight or flight, lots of energy, in that area we're going to see a lot of movement, a lot of either getting away, coming toward, movement to try to figure out what you want. If they are in a shutdown, which I felt like peace was, and here as I asked her to go faster, it activated some of that stress response, the 8 to 10, almost a little too much. But I tested it out and she was able to calmly trot. But I could see that it would quickly escalate, so I didn't keep that going for long. And as soon as I even thought about stopping, she stopped. She wanted that. And then when I walked towards her, she stayed in shutdown, that 0 to 3. So taking me a bit to get to this 10-point scale, right? 0 to 3 is when they've either had too much in that moment, overwhelmed. Let's say they go into a stress response. Imagine I was trying to lunge her and she just started bucking and pulling and jumping and kicking. And that would be the stress response, the 8 to 10. If that either happens too long, like some people will run them around a round pen until they finally shut down and we think, oh, good, we've gotten them. But have we just induced a 0 to 3 trauma response, or did they really learn anything? So here's the challenge to myself and others. If we're functioning with our horses or ourself in the 8 to 10, and for her right there, that's pushing up a little into an 8 because she is so shut down. And there she steps forward calmly. And when I ask for more, she still is, the tail comes up, the sideways, the sort of anxious, quick energy. And this is where I'm just taking the information and going, you know what? My plan to lunge today is not going to benefit her for what I really want. And I haven't watched the video back in full, so I don't know how long it takes me to really come to that conclusion. because I wanted to test it out. And I wasn't just trying to get a behavior. I also wanted this baseline video to show where we start, because this is an ongoing process and project with peace. And I want to be able to look back and see the difference. So I did want to push the envelope just a little bit so we could truly see where she was at. So what I am finding with her, and particularly this day, is that while most of the time she seems to be in this very calm alert 4 to 7, I was starting to suspect that in actuality, peace spends a lot of time under that 4 in a shutdown response. And I could tell that by a lot of the pictures and time spent around her where she looked distant in her eyes or frozen. Frozen, stuck energy is sort of indicative of the freeze response. Makes sense, right? So what I started doing here was taking a lot of pauses and seeing if I could blend with her and help her to come into 4 to 7 without going into a shutdown and without jumping right back into that 8 to 10. And here we're starting to see some frustration from her, where she's going sideways and continuing to go sideways. So I really had to encourage her, come forward. There again, I'm using my rope to make energy behind her, not on her, and not necessarily even toward her, but in the space behind. Now here, I finally got smarter to say, you know what? She wants to be with me, and I want her to go forward. So maybe I could blend by, and there she stepped on the rope, and I just want to point out, when that happens, just calmly fix it. Some horses will panic, and you know, we don't have a fence around our arena, so I really don't want her to get loose, and she doesn't seem like the type of horse that would panic and get loose, but some would. I really wanted her to stay in that 4 to 7. When I started to realize that I felt that she was really more in that shutdown response, and that when I would add energy, because she seemed calm, we would jump quickly to the 8 to 10 with some stress. That helped me to see that, oh, she's not really in calm alert. So I went back to the beginning exercise here of seeing where she was at and seeing if I had found any difference. Could she give at all to her head going down? And here, actually, I guess is where I saw a little bit more of that left ear. And as I stopped the pressure and just rubbed on the ear, what I was doing was what we often call attunement. It's simply just a word that means I'm paying attention to her and listening to what her body's telling me. And when I bumped that ear, not purposefully, putting a little pressure and moved my arm, I got a stress response from her, a flight response, a bit of a fight too. Don't touch me there was what her speech bubble said. So I said, oh, I see you. And I barely touched it, and that was okay with her. And then here I'm just rubbing the rest of her body, attempting to make sure she knows I see you. I want to make sure she sees and feels. When we or our horses are in a shutdown, we don't feel. And so just touching her body, we can do that with ourselves by giving ourselves a hug and literally like rubbing our own arms up and down like a hug. I was doing that for her. So I learned from her and from that experience with her that she really wanted to be with me. There I sped up, and look, I didn't have to pull. She came with me. And that pushing her and driving her away, even just to try to get her to walk a circle, was really more than was appropriate for our bond at that time and for her sense of safety. And that developing sense of safety, to me, is way more important to have with her than her obedient behavior. When we develop that sense of safety, again, this applies to us too, we can learn, because it's all about that 10-point scale. If we want to stay in the 4 to 7, which we do in order to learn, it's the only place we learn, we need to not push into the 8 to 10 stress response or allow that stress response to overwhelm us or our horse and shoot us down into the 0 to 3 overwhelm freeze. For some of us and for some of our horses, they've lived in the stress response for so long that it's become normal. And their bodies and our bodies have learned to just shut down and tolerate stress. So when we begin to wake that up in ourselves and in our horses, they come out of the stress in 0 to 3. We think they would just go right into 4 to 7. What I have found actually happens is they shoot up into these little sections of 8 to 10. One of the things I've been studying is attachment theory. She's a perfect picture of like secure, anxious, avoidant, disorganized.
Oh, you want to see Miss Alicia's skirt? It's so pretty. It's flowing. Actually, I want the grass Miss Alicia is standing on. She really today wanted closeness.
Yeah.
Closeness felt safer to her than getting away. And I was hesitant to send her away. I wanted to send her away and bring her back to say, you're safe there, you're safe there, you're safe there. And she'll start to probably come alive a little, become playful. And right now she's like almost so well behaved, she's afraid to step out of line. Yeah, I see a little playful girls there.
So I hope that was really cool to watch, just to see how we needed to blend that safeness for her of being close and moving away and being willing to adjust for what my expectation was when I first started working with her that day. So safety, physically, look how much better she's looking, and then emotionally, and her feeling comfortable with my touch, my closeness, and then being able to ask her to do things like move away and have her not feel like I'm breaching that bond of safety. So that's pretty much been our first month. The other big change is that her buddy Joy, who she was living with and really getting that safe companionship from another horse with at first, has moved to her home in North Carolina to get to be a mama. So we're so excited for Joy and for her continued exciting journey. So for now, that's it from me and peace.